Hello, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. How are you doing today?
Um, I'm doing great. The weather's kind of hot, so it was a little bit um, hard to come here, but other than that, I think everything else is fine.
Ah, yes, it's really starting to get warm nowadays, isn't it? So that actually leads us into our first question perfectly. What is the weather like where you live?
So I live in Seoul, which is almost the middle of Seoul, city of Korea. Um, Most of the time it's warm, it's breezy when the wind is blowing, but nowadays, even during the winter when it should be cold and summer when it should be hot, it's not that cold, it's not that hot. Um, I think the weather is getting a little bit warm when it should be getting cold, and it's getting a little bit more cooler when it should be hot.
I see. Do you personally prefer hot or cold weather?
I personally prefer cold weathers. I really like the snow, and I really don't like the hot weather because I don't like to sweat. So I would definitely prefer cold weather over hot weathers.
Do you prefer wet or dry weather?
Same reason with the reason I like cold weather. Um, I would prefer dry weather because as I don't like to sweat, when the weather's wet, I sweat a lot. So I think I would like dry weather more.
So it's more comfortable.
Yes.
I see. Are you in the habit of checking the weather forecast?
I forgot to bring my umbrella during rainy seasons when I was young. So nowadays, I definitely check the weather forecast before going out. And if there's a sign of rain, even if there's a slight sign of rain, I would always take my umbrella with me.
Okay, great. Always prepared. What do you think are the effects of climate change in recent years?
I would say the main effect would be the weather not being correct, as in during the winter when it should be cold, when it should be snowing at a particular time period or season, it's snowing a little bit more late, or the weather's a little bit more warmer than it should be. And during the summer, it's summer's kind of coming more early and the weather's getting more hot.
I see. And would you like to visit other cities that have different climates from where you live?
I would definitely want to live or go on a trip to a country that's different from Korea. I enjoy cold weather, so I think I would enjoy going to countries like Canada or Greenland that has more cooler atmosphere than my home country.
Great. All right. So that is everything for part one. Now we're going to move on to part two. So in part two of the test, you will get a question prompt and you will have 1 minute to prepare your answer using a pencil and paper. Then when that 1 minute is up, you will have up to 2 minutes to say your answer.
Okay.
Okay? So your question is, describe a person you know who is from a different culture. Okay, that's your 1 minute preparation time. So describe a person you know who is from a different culture.
So I have a friend named Jacob, and he is from the United States. I met him at college when I first went to my university, and I really thought he was very open-minded. He had a more outgoing attitude and a little bit more optimistic than other friends that I had in Korea. And because of that personality, he helped me get along with the new culture and new atmosphere of US college. And I think that was very helpful for me in that case. And most of the time, his open-minded attitude kind of affected me also. So it changed my attitude and my personality as becoming an outgoing person too. When we get along, when we hang out with other friends, he would also be the one who leads the friend group. And since I was kind of not as much outgoing, a little bit, not pessimistic, but calm and quiet friend in that group, he would always kind of bring me to a meeting or a party, and that would help me get along with other friends, which helped me get used to the environment better.
Oh, that's great. All right. So now let's move on to part 3, okay? So, where and how can we get to know people of different cultures better?
I would say, in my case, I went to an international school in a different country. And not only my case of going to a school, but I would say going to a different country is the first step of knowing people in a different culture. I think that would be the hardest step for a person to take their first step into a different culture and speaking their own language, trying their authentic food would help them get along with that culture. And if those fit, and if one gets interested in learning their language or how to make a certain dish, I think those steps would be very helpful for a person to get along with those different cultured people. And another would be, there's a lot of applications that you could use to talk with people of different culture nowadays. And I think reaching out to them and talking about their new culture that you have never known about would be another good way of knowing people of different culture.
Okay, great. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of cultural diversity?
I would say the main advantage would be, after learning about a new culture, you become more open-minded and open to other cultures that you have never seen or experienced before. And that open-mindedness could help you have a better positive thought about reaching out to new people, or not just people, but new environments. And the disadvantage would be when that diversity is too tilted. Say if there's a certain minority in the group that some people might not like, or if there's a certain culture that does not have a open-minded thought process or mind, it would cause confusion in that group. And I think that would cause a disadvantage in what diversity usually wants to mean.
Okay, so how can traditional culture and other cultures coexist?
I would say the main thing would be finding what's similar. And I would say the easiest part of combining or having to know more about each other's culture would be food in my case. There's a lot of fusion cuisines nowadays as more and more chefs and cooks and entrepreneurs kind of invest in and take time to make new menus. And by knowing each other's food culture and trying to combine those two, it would be helpful in that case.
Okay, great. And now your final question is, which traditions in your country are disappearing?
In my case, the main tradition that I think is not disappearing quite well yet, but I think will be disappearing is there's a certain culture in the military where the higher commanders or higher soldiers would always follow orders in any circumstances. And there's a good reason behind that due to a lot of things. But the one thing that hasn't been considered in the past, which was considered tradition, is people wouldn't think about the soldiers or other people's health or mindset in any way. And I think it's a good thing that this so-called tradition of definite following orders is disappearing, is people are thinking more about other people's health and mindset. And due to that, the environment is becoming more healthier.
Okay, good. It was really nice speaking with you today. And now let's get into the feedback.
Okay.
So, you did a lot of things really well during your speaking test. So, for example, I thought that your general accent and pronunciation was really great. Honestly, it was quite like native level pronunciation. So, you did a great job with that. Okay. And also, the vocabulary you used was always an appropriate choice. So your vocabulary choices were quite good. And also you used a few maybe harder or more idiomatic expressions. For example, you used the expression get along quite a bit and you used it appropriately. So that was really good. And you used optimistic and pessimistic appropriately as well. So it was really good that you were able to include some sort of higher level expressions as well. So you did a really great job there. On the other side, sometimes I felt that you were maybe a bit hesitant and you paused quite a few times, especially during the second part. I know it can be tricky and I know you're probably very nervous. So those things will kind of fade away with further practice, all right? Also, just in terms of grammatical accuracy, there were some instances where you used the expression more, but you also used ER at the end of the next word. So more cooler, more warmer. Actually, when we use more, we should just say either cooler or like more cool. Either or, and not both. But in general, your grammar was pretty good, but there were just a few like small things like that. Maybe it's just a bit like habitual, you know, so it's hard not to do that. But those are just some things that you should kind of focus on. All right. For your score, I would give you a score of 7.5 on the IELTS bands. Just what could bring your score up a bit is just further practice to work on mainly the hesitation and pauses. And also, if you can include more idioms and like higher level vocabulary and structures next time, then I think that would bring your score up significantly.
Okay. Thank you.